So welcome to today's lecture. Today we'll be talking about official controls in the primary production, and we'll focus majorly on the inspections. So we want to look at provide some guidelines to the inspector. If you're an inspector and you are sent to apply official controls at primary production, how do you go about it? So in this lecture, we provide some guidelines on how to go about conducting inspection. I think we realize that it is the responsibility of the food and feed business operator to comply with the national standards and regulations. And if you're involved in export, of course, you meet the standards required by the one importing, even other international obligations. But the government also has a responsibility to ensure that food and feed business operators are complying with the national standards and regulations. So you see, when you look at the food safety system, food safety management system, there are different players in that who play an important role in ensuring that we have safe food on the market. So we have the government, we have the industry, we have the academia, we have also the public, but each one of these has a responsibility. Here now we are focusing on the primary production. So we are looking at the industry, and we are saying that the industry at primary production level, they have got an obligation to ensure that they comply to standards. But the government also plays a supervisory role to ensure that these are complying to the said regulations and standards. So this lecture describes the procedures for carrying out primary production food and feed hygiene inspection. So what we say that if you go to a farm, for instance, how are you going to conduct hygiene inspection? So the focus really is inspection or hygiene. It's my desire or the aim of this lecture that when you are equipped with this knowledge or competent authority who have this knowledge will understand how to apply these hygiene inspections so that they are done consistently and proportionately in line with what they are inspecting. So this becomes very, very essential. But also this knowledge gained here will not only be useful in guiding people or personnel working in competent authority to apply these inspections consistently and proportionately, but they can also be used as part of self-assessment by the industry at primary production. So even a farmer or whoever is involved in primary production can use this guideline to do a self-assessment even before the law enforcers or officers from the official controls come. And we are saying that we need to be mindful that these laws or these guidelines will not be used in isolation. But when you are applying these guidelines, when you're doing inspections, you need to use them together or with the national laws and other regulations, other national laws that guide, application of production of safe food at primary production level. So what we want to achieve in this lesson is saying at the end of this lecture, the student should be able to define primary production and also understand the scope of activities at that level. We should also understand inspection for compliance to good agricultural practice, which are GAPs, and good hygiene practices, which are GHPs, by any food or feed business operators. So you should be able to understand how to inspect for compliance. When you go to the farm, how can you inspect a farm that they are complying to good agricultural practices and they are complying to good hygiene practices? That is both the feed producers and also food producers. Let's start with definitions. We want to understand primary production because this is a word that we use quite common in this lecture. In fact, we have a series of lectures linked to this. So this is part one, but I'll come to part two because the materials to be presented is bulky, so it will be broken up into about 3 parts. So primary production involves rearing or growing of primary products and includes harvesting, milking, and farmed animal production prior to slaughter. In other setup, you find that they say up to slaughter, but here we are saying prior to slaughter. So the activities that are involved in rearing, harvesting, milking of farm animals prior to slaughter could be categorized as all those activities are primary production. They also include hunting and fishing, and also including harvesting of wild fruits. So if we say people were involved in legal hunting and also fishing from capture fisheries from the wild, also harvesting, fruit hunting, also all that part is part of primary production. So the fruits or the products that are involved at primary production do not undergo any other operation following their harvest, collection, capture, apart from simple or physical treatment. So we are saying at this level, we don't do processing. They don't go any other operation apart from harvesting, collection, capture, or apart from simple physical treatment, such as maybe washing or dusting. So those but when you start to process or undergo other operations, then they move from primary production probably to another phase, which is a secondary production. So the other word we want to understand is inspection, because we are saying that these guidelines are about to empower you to know how to go about undertaking inspection at primary production. So one may ask then, what is inspection? Inspection is the examination of food or systems for control of food material processing and distribution, including in-processing and finished product testing, in order to verify that they conform to the required requirements. So what we are saying that in inspection, you want to examine foods or systems. So you can have inspection of products or inspection of systems. So you can have product control or systems control. And this includes, we are talking about raw material foods, including raw materials, processing, their processing and distribution, including in-process and also finished product testing, in order to verify that they comply to the requirements. So here, the requirements, we are talking about, you do the examination to see whether they comply to the national standards or regulations. That's what is involved in inspection. But the other also linked to this can be auditing. Auditing is a systematic and functionally independent examination to determine whether activities and related results comply with planned activities. So you can see, we'll look at it, there's a slightly difference. With the inspection, you are trying to assess whether they conform to the requirement. But with auditing, we are saying that you have planned objectives, you have targets, and you want to meet, and then we see whether you are meeting those planned objectives. You know that a food safety, a food company may have quality objectives or food safety objectives, and then the audit team will come and see whether you are meeting those planned food safety objectives. So inspection and audit are not always the same thing. Yeah, but regardless of the differences, both are part of conformity assessment. So when you do an audit or you do an inspection, they may not be the same, but they both are set on assessment, conformity assessment, to see whether there is compliance against a certain set of rules, laws, or criteria that has been set. So when you look at the ISO 9001, 2015, defines inspection. An inspection is the determination of conformity to specified requirements. Again, we have requirements, we have regulations, and then you want to inspect whether you want to determine whether these conform to the requirements. Whereas according to this document, an audit has a similar definition and is the systematic, independent, and documented process for obtaining objective evidence and evaluating it objectively to determine the extent to which audit criteria are fulfilled. So we are saying that it's a systematic and independent and documented process for obtaining objective evidence and evaluating it objectively to determine how you meet the criteria. So of course there are set criteria, and then you see whether there's conformity to these set criteria. So an overview of inspection, what involves inspection looks at the present, the physical state. It is less formal activity, and generally inspection are unannounced. When you want to go an inspection, for instance, you go unannounced so that things are not stage managed. Because if you inform a company that you are going to do an inspection, in most cases they will do the cleanup, they will stage manage things, and it will look at, as if they've been doing things right, because you are looking at the present state of things. It can be a standalone activity, or inspection can also be part of an audit. As I said, the report can be less formal, as you're going to see, as opposed to an audit. Then little time may be allocated to do an inspection. Whereas an audit looks at the past records, to review the records of the activity that have been taking place, but it may also involve a present inspection, that you may be required to tour the farm or tour the facility as part of the audit. But you spend a lot of time, reviewing the document to see how they've been doing things. And normally it's formally planned, and you announced, and it's generally announced, of course, but not always. And then it also includes, as I said, a component of inspection. And normally a formal written report is communicated, to the facility that has been is being audited, and always involves quite extensive time is required. So it requires a lot more time to do an audit compared to an inspection. So having defined those keywords that are going to be used in this, now let's talk about the scope of activity involved in primary production. We just want to understand what is the scope, what are the bounds. So the officer involved in enforcement of primary production of food or feed, they have a role in identifying activities on the farm that fall within the scope of primary production. So you have to know that these activities fall within primary production, or they are outside those bounds. That's what we're talking about. So this is best captured by looking at this. So production or growing of crop or plant crops for food use, such as grain, fruit, vegetables, herbs, as well as their transportation within and to an establishment, storage and handling of primary production at the farm, and their further transportation to an establishment, this is what is defined as primary production. So we're talking about basically growing this and moving them within the farm or to the storage site within the establishment. This is part of primary production. When it pertains to animals, we are talking about production or rearing of food-producing animals at the farm, and any activity linked therewith, as well as transportation of meat animals to the market or slaughterhouse, or transportation of animals between farms. So whatever activities are linked to rearing of the animals, transporting them in between farms or to the slaughterhouse or live animal market, we are saying that these are what we call activities linked to primary production. So when you talk about fruit or fruits or other products obtained from the wild. It involves harvesting of mushroom, berries, flying ants, etc. in the wild, and their transportation to the establishment. That's part of primary production. Or hunting of wild game. So activities at the point of primary production that may improve their presentation, such as washing and trimming of vegetables, sorting and grading of fruit, or drying of cereals, these are also part of primary production. So when you are drying cereals, you can't say that you are already processing. You can't say you've moved to processing stage. Or if you are just trimming of vegetables which are soiled, or you are grading fruit, or you are washing them, all those activities, they still fall under primary production. I've talked about also transportation of this within the farm or between farms, and also if it is animals to the slaughter, is also part of primary production. I think some of this is somewhat repetition of what we have about. But also talking about mixing of feed at a farm, which does not include use of additives. So we are not just mixing feed ingredients at the farm, and without using additives, also that is classified as part of primary production. So having understood the scope, now you are the inspector, you go to the farm, and you want to start undertaking this activity. So with the first thing, of course, we want to look at is the law. So I said that you can't do hygiene inspections of a food business organization or feed business organization without you understanding the legal requirement or the law under which this activity or this organization operates, or that governs the operation of activities at this particular enterprise. So one thing important is that the food business operator must not place under the law, that's under the law, the law requires that a food business operator must not place food or feed on the market that is unsafe for human consumption. So the law requires that if food is unsafe, has got hazards present in it, it should not be placed on the market for human consumption. So the same as feed. If feed is considered unsafe, or some adverse as products, or that could have adverse effect on humans and animals, it shouldn't also be used, in feeding animals, because ultimately, if feed is contaminated, you see that it is going to enter the value chain and it will affect human health. So the same, if feed that is contaminated or unsafe must not be used in, livestock feeding. So unsafe feed or food must be immediately withdrawn from the market if it is suspected to be so. So we're saying that if the farmer or whoever, the one raising crop production or involved in rearing animals, if you find that the feed is not awesome, it's not fit for animal feeding or not fit for human consumption, you must immediately, they must immediately withdraw it from the market. So under this, then, there are certain things that as an inspector you need to do. So when you go to the farm, and under this, you want to ensure that the food business operator understands their responsibility. Do they understand their responsibility with respect to unsafe food commodities? Their responsibility to ensure that if the food they place on the market is safe for human consumption. Do they understand their responsibility to immediately withdraw food or feed from the market if it is considered to be unsafe? So these are some things that you want to find out when you go to the farm, whether they understand these obligations. And if they understand these obligations, are there procedures to ensure that these are done? How if say for instance the farmer discovers that food they say the crops are not safe for human consumption, what do they do? What systems have they put in place, for instance, to get rid of contaminated products or withdraw those that have already been placed on the market. So you have to investigate this, you have to inspect this and obtain information. So under this requirement, it's important that the food business operator or the feed business operator is able to trace, have a traceability system in place. They should be able to trace where they got their raw material, including not only raw material that are used for processing, but also the packaging material. They should understand the supplier from which they obtained those things. When did they get them? And how much? And what are the batch numbers, specific batch numbers? So they need to put a traceability system. I think if you review the lecture on traceability, it will help you remind you on how this traceability system can be put in place. In addition, they should be able to trace where their product or their produce has been sent. Not only should they put in place a system to know where the raw materials are coming from or to know where the inputs are coming from, but they should also put a system to know where their produce is going. You remember under the traceability system, you have to keep information one step behind and one step in front. Information has to be kept. And so you need to, when you go to do an inspection, you need to find out if these are in place. The other thing that should be inspected or you should look at is the general facility. So we want to look at the general facilities that are on the farm or this particular business enterprise. And the essence of looking at the facility is to ensure that the facilities that are in place are able to minimize contamination of products. So we want to look at measures that have been put in place in terms of the built-up facilities and the equipment that are used in primary production, including the associated operations such as transportation and storage. How have these things been put in place? Are they able to ensure production or reduce contamination? And are they able to facilitate cleaning and disinfections? Because you want to have these facilities, one, that they will minimize contamination of primary products that are being handled in these facilities. If it is the equipment, you want to ensure that the equipment being used is able to minimize contamination of products. And also, you also want to see whether the built-up facilities or the equipment being used can easily be sanitized. I give an example of one of the places where we went to. A small-scale person was involved in peanut butter manufacturing. They were doing peanut butter in a kitchen. And this peanut butter person who was processing peanut butter, they had bought an equipment. And that equipment, it was difficult to clean. You can't dismantle it. You can't, remove the different parts and clean them independently. So with such equipment, you find that as they are doing the processing, it's difficult to clean and disinfect. So you find that they are able to harbor microorganisms and then contaminate products as they are being processed. So we are saying that the system, the equipment, and the facilities that are there should ensure, that there will be hygiene production. Even the way, the layout of the factory, if it's a factory or the farm, the way things are laid out, the way different activities are located in relation to each other. Where is the disposal of manure, for instance, and where is the source of the water, and where are the pit latrines, or where the latrines are located. Where is the handling of finished products placed in relation to those contaminated products. So you look at all those things, and then you look at if disinfection can effectively take place. You find that there are certain things that are required. For instance, if it's equipment, for you to effectively disinfect equipment, one of the things may be, for instance, you should be able to separate the different components so that they can be independently cleaned. So that will be, you have to look at that. So you are looking at the facilities, the built up facilities. You're looking at the sheds and the animal housing facilities. Are they able to facilitate, for instance, hygienic activities? Or will they allow harborage of pests? Are the structures, are they easy to clean? The floor, for instance, where the animals sleep or rest, the resting place, are the floor such that you can easily wash out the manure and disinfect them? So you look at those facilities. Yeah, and the officer should also look for evidence of, we say that building, facilities, equipment being appropriately and regularly cleaned. You should look at, are these people able to regularly clean this equipment, and also the facilities, the buildings and others. And also you look at the facilities and equipment, are they made of materials? What materials are they made of? Basically, here, if you look at it, we are looking at most of these are prerequisite programs. They are prerequisites that are required for you to establish a sound food safety management systems. So you look at the facilities, you look at the equipment, if they have crates that they use for collecting tomatoes from the field, are they made of the right material? If say, for instance, the crates that are used for collecting tomato are made of wood, and you have crates used for collecting tomato are made of, for instance, plastic. You find that, say, for instance, plastic may be easier to disinfect compared to crates made of wood. So you look at all those and see where the possible sources of contamination. Remember, we are talking about hygiene inspection. And hygiene has to do with the freedom from any possible source of contamination, it be biological contamination, chemical contamination, or physical contamination. And so you look at all those activities. And there should be no evidence of pest infestation or mold sporage in the facility. So this is very important. The other facility you look at is if they are using vehicles or trailers to move products, either from the fields to the storage place or to the market. So we are saying that the vehicles that are used should be appropriate, and also they should be regularly cleaned. In fact, there should be a protocol, an SOP on how these vehicles are cleaned, or the trailers are cleaned. So, and what products do they use? So, in an ideal setup, there should be a cleaning protocol for trailers and vehicles that are used to transport protocols, and that they are using the proper, appropriate disinfectant. Okay, I've talked about the design of storage. Also, the storage facilities that are used to store, they must be properly designed. For instance, if you want to store maize, you find that most of these products they'll say store in a cool and dry place, for instance. And now, if you store maize in a place that is likely to suffer from condensation, and then you find that there will be fungal growth in such a storage place. So you want to check where they are storing grains, and also you look at is there a likelihood of infestation of pests such as rats and other pests. So you look at all those storage facilities. We talked about at primary production, there could be activities related to sorting or cleaning of produce, maybe trimming of, and washing to remove soil. So we are saying that wherever activities are of that nature are taking place, we will look at the lighting. Is there sufficient lighting, for instance, in the building to ensure that the activities that they are being done, they are able to detect if there's something wrong with the product. So proper lighting, and you don't use colored lights in this place. So you ensure that all those things are in place. Then, of course, when we talk about the avoiding contamination of these products, we're talking about in other countries they have no glass policy, for instance, where you don't use any glass container or anything in the factory, just because in case these things break and they may enter the product. So you find that there are factories or there are premises where they've got no glass policy. They use plastics or other things just to reduce contamination. I've talked about cereals and their storage, and so let me just move here. So now let's look at the handling and storage. Handling and storage. So feed business operators are to take adequate measures to clean and, where necessary, disinfect facilities, equipment, container crates, and vehicles used for producing, preparing, grading, or storage of feed. And they are to ensure hygienic production, transportation, and storage of condition of feed. Feed equipment designed and constructed and placed in such a way that they reduce or minimize contamination. So we are saying the equipment that is used in designing, the equipment that is used in handling feed should be designed in such a way that it reduces contamination. So here we want to talk about handling and storage. Here is specific to handling and storage of feed. The officer should consider any risk arising from sources of contamination. That is livestock having access to farm building or stores. So here we want to see how feed, we're talking about feed, how feed is handled and stored. And if you are storing a feed in a particular place, we are saying that you should ensure that livestock do not have access to those places, because they could contaminate the feed or the raw materials used for such. In addition, consideration should be given to access to materials which could cause harm to livestock or subsequently to human health. What we are saying here is that you should also look at are there any sources of contamination on the farm, where if animals access those areas, then they could get contaminated. Let's give an example. For instance, if you have a waste disposal site, we are saying that do animals have access to those disposal sites where they can eat things that could bring about their contamination of the final product. They could be exposed to hazards, and ultimately, if human beings ate meat from such meat derived from such animals, they could get those contamination. So we are saying that animals should not have access to things like fertilizers or pesticides, especially where you're doing integrated farming. You have crop farming and also livestock. We are saying that there should be a proper disposal of this to avoid this. And they should be cleaning and, where necessary, disinfection practices associated with feed storage facilities and feeding system should be considered. So you look at how do they clean where they keep the feed. We are talking much of where they're keeping feed. We are saying that how do they keep these places? Are they disinfected? Are they cleaned? Do they control pests in order to reduce the risk of contamination? In case of feed, again, on sites where milling and mixing of feed take place, the inspection should determine the source of the ingredient used, including the scope and type of any concentrate or supplement used. So we are saying that there are certain facilities in primary production where they are mixing ingredients. You remember that we said that we accept additives. So ingredients could be obtained from different sources. Maybe you get soybeans from this farm, you get maize from this farm, you get sunflower from the other farm, and you get salt. What we are saying is that the inspector must must determine where these primary ingredients are sourced, just to ensure the quality. And if anything, evidence to that effect could be demanded as to where they obtain those products. Consideration should also be given to whether the feed business operator applies food safety management. When you're doing the assessment of the feed business operator, you want to find out, do they have any safety management system? In this case, we'll talk about ASIP, for instance. Do they have ASIP in place? We know of certain enterprises that have got the ASIP or some form of safety management system in order to reduce the likelihood of contaminating the product that is coming out of that place. So the FSR should also check how each ingredient is stored on site. How are they storing this ingredient, and whether there are risks of contamination due to lack of cleanness in the storage facilities, or we talk about the result of spoilage as a result of moisture or other pests or any other factors. So you have to satisfy yourself with that. On sites where finished feed is brought in, the inspector should establish whether storage is in bulk or in bags and assess the risk of contamination of the bag. So there are certain facilities or livestock farms, for instance, where feed is not mixed on the farm, but is brought to the farm. So you want to assess and record and know whether it's brought in bulk or it's bagged. And the officer should be satisfied that the feed is sourced from a registered or approved supplier, and that any supplements provided are also unlikely to lead to contamination risks. So if the farmer, for instance, is getting feed from outside, we are saying that they should get from somebody or from an enterprise that is regulated, that is approved by the respective official controllers. In case of veterinary medicine, we are saying that where veterinary medicine or veterinary products are being used, there must be records kept with respect to their use, with respect to withdrawals and all those things. And packaging used for storage material produced on site should also be protected from contamination. So if you have packaging material that you are using to store or to pack the products that you are producing from your facility, we are saying that those packaging material should be kept free from contamination. Because if we may have produced our product in a safe, in an hygienic manner, and now we get this product which has been hygienically produced, and then we package it in a contaminated packet. So, for instance, let me say, for instance, if you're a small-scale farmer and you're engaged in say, for instance, packaging vegetables. So you may have packaged harvested your crops, and then you want to put them in plastic. But if those plastics are contaminated, then those will also be contaminated. I want to take a break at this point, and when we come back, we'll come and continue on other aspects of inspection, other things that you need to do inspection on when you're at a farm with respect to hygiene. So we'll come to part 2 in the next lecture. Thank you for listening.